Okay, so I'm waiting for it to go live. Please excuse any noise that you're hearing in the background. I just want to make sure that you're all able to hear me. And it looks like we are here.
Oh, is that you?
And let me hit the record button.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrice. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the MAPC Executive Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. I am President Erin Wortman, and I am calling our meeting to order at 11:34 a.m. At this time, I'm going to call roll. So please come off mute. Please. And here we go. Imai.
Present.
Colette.
Present.
Keith.
Present.
Karen.
Here.
Jen. Tom D.
Here.
Whitney. John D.
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
Tom G. Mo.
Here.
Sagoon. Tabor.
Here.
Robert. Sarah Lee. I forgot there's two Sarahs. Sorry about that. Angie. Peter. Diana. Vandana. Claire.
Here.
Sam.
Here.
Steve. Juan. Elaine.
Here.
And Erin here. Thank you so much, everyone. All right, first up or next up on the agenda is the approval of minutes from August 27th, 2025. If there are no questions, I am looking for a motion to put it on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right. I'm going to say motion made by Tom Daniel and second made by Imai. It is now on the consent agenda. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. All right. Next up is the treasurer's report. I'm going to call on Treasurer Sam.
Thank you, President Erin. Hello, everybody. Sam Seidel, Treasurer. This month, we are going to look at the June income statement from 2025, which you received in your packets. Why do we care about June? June closes out our fiscal year. I'll go into some of the numbers. There's actually a good bit of information in here, but we won't get too lost in the weeds. As we look through our year, the overall story is a good one. And I will start by just saying that our overhead rate, which is the number I'm always pointing to, is good. If you remember, we made a little adjustment at the mid-year budget last year because we thought we were going to run a little bit high on our administrative expenses. It turns out that as we made some policy changes and we worked through the year, we were able to bring down those administrative expenses more in line with where we thought we'd end up at the start of the year. So our overhead rate, if you look at the far right-hand column down at the bottom of the page, is 124.5. And that, because this is the June income statement, that's what we close out the year at. And that's very good because we predicted we'd be at 124 way back in the beginning of the budget process. And we got pretty close. And if you'll remember, at the middle of the year, we adjusted that upwards because we thought we would be spending more on our administrative costs. So as a broad story, that's a good story. Some other numbers just to look at briefly. If we go about halfway down the page in our revenue section, we'll see that our total revenue for the month of June was much higher than what we had budgeted. It was at 153% of what we had budgeted. And that, in large part, I think, although Ann and I didn't get a chance to kind of go into this, is because our pass-through money, which is right below that, the numbers right below that, was at 201%. So there's a lot of money flowing through the system in June. However, if you go over one more column, so we're now in our year-to-date columns on the right-hand side of that, we're in the same line items. You'll see that our total revenue for the year was down to 77% of what we had budgeted. But if we go one below that to our pass-through money, so this is the money that just comes in and goes right out the door again, that was much lower than we had budgeted as well. And the reason for that is, and Anna and I had a chance to talk about this, a lot of the Homeland Security money that comes through MAPC and then goes immediately out the door is on a different fiscal schedule. So although our year ends on June 30th, the Homeland Security monies can be spent all the way through August. So a lot of the Homeland Security money does not show up in this fiscal year. It actually is going to show up in the current fiscal year that we're in. Other numbers to note, I'm going to go way over to the left-hand column of numbers and go way down to the bottom there. You'll see revenue to be recognized in FY26. That's money that was allocated for this year, but we just didn't get a chance to get to that work in the FY25 year. So we're going to push out about $500,000 into this FY26 year. That's work that's already teed up and ready to go. But that's so in a sense, that's good. That's money we've already got online for that. And then the only other number I'll point out is if we just follow that line across and we look up a little bit, we'll see a number 180,576. That's our net income, net loss number. That number, 180,000 at the end of the year, is largely due to the fact that interest rates are very high. So the money that we have in the bank account is making money as it sits in there. That kind of concludes the story for the June 2025 income statement. Overall, the numbers are very good. We're in FY26 now, and we look forward to looking at our July and August numbers at our next meeting. I think we'll probably get a chance to do that. And these numbers that we're looking at today are unaudited, but that process is also starting. That concludes the Treasurer's Report.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam. Is there any questions or comments for Sam or Anna? Karen.
Just a quick question, since you mentioned, hi, Sam. Since you mentioned that interest income is higher than expected, where on that statement is that reflected? Because it seems to be
we got to ask Anna actually where the interest income shows up. And if she's here on the phone, maybe she could address that.
I'm just curious because most of the lines of revenue are.
It's actually right down where it says interest income in the income statement.
Down below.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. That makes sense. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So yes, and I actually I knew the answer to that question, but didn't. Anyway, yes, go on.
Yeah. I just want to add, just to highlight also, in terms of the the policies that we put in place and some other solutions to raise our direct labor. So we ended up doing really well. We ended up the year at 97%, which really did drive down that overall overhead rate. So it was a combination of those two, the labor and administrative expenses being lower than we anticipated.
Yes. Good point.
Right. Any other questions or comments on the Treasurer's Report? I'm going to ask for a motion to put the approval of the Treasurer's Report on the consent agenda.
So move. Second.
Okay, I saw that the motion was made by Mo. Was the second made by Tabor?
John DePriest.
John DePriest. I knew it was male on my third row. Okay, motion made by Mo, second made by John DePriest. Thank you both. It is now on the consent agenda. Thank you so much. All right, next up on the agenda is Project Share. And to introduce staff for Project Share, I'm going to call on the acting executive director, Lizzie.
Thanks so much, Erin. I'm really thrilled to be able to bring this project share to you today. It's actually been a minute since we've had a chance to do a project share in front of the executive committee, but I actually referenced this work a little bit in last month's meeting because last month's meeting coincided with the conclusion of our Sustainable Marblehead project. And I wanted to bring it to you to actually talk a little bit more about what that work entailed and what it is that we are doing in this space. Because for almost my entire time at MAPC, there's always been this feeling at the local level that you can't really do historic preservation and actually also meet your climate goals really meaningfully. And that's hard for so many of our cities and towns that have these really older downtowns that they're trying to do a lot of good historic preservation work, which we like because that's about telling our story and creating community cohesion. So we started doing this work. I'm not going to steal all the thunder of the team, but we started doing this work a couple of years ago, and it's starting to kick off, and more communities are actually really interested in talking to us about it. And I'm excited that we're like able to take up this space and share it with you. So I'm thrilled today to turn over this project chair to Lindsay Randall from our Arts and Culture team. And Sasha Scheideroff from our Clean Energy team. And I'm going to give it to them and ask them to do a more formal introduction of themselves and then take it away.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Just making sure. You never know with Zoom, right? And technology. So I'm Lindsay Randall. I'm the Senior Regional Humanities Specialist on our Arts and Culture team. I've been with MAPC for 3 years, and I was the project manager for the Sustainable Marblehead Heritage Project. And my background is actually, I'm an archaeologist by training. So I obviously care a lot about the history and protecting it. I'll hand it to Sasha to give her introduction.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sasha Scheideroff. I'm a principal planner on the Clean Energy team and have been at MAPC for a little more than 7 years. And I will say that through this process, I also learned a lot from our Arts and Culture team and those wearing the sort of historic preservation hat. I never knew there was so much to know about windows. We had Lindsay will get into it, but we did some historic walking tours and learned a lot in Marblehead and Salem. But I'm glad to be here, and I think Lindsay's going to share her screen.
Yep, I'm going to do that. I'm also yes, we are the only RPA with a trained archaeologist. This is also the project landing page if anyone is interested, and I will share my screen and I will go through this. Can everyone see it and everything? Excellent. Okay, so this was our project team. What was interesting about this project that Lizzie alluded to, and both Sarah and Sasha and I have talked about, is this was a collaboration between arts and culture, land use, and clean energy. And this was actually land use and arts and culture have created the history and heritage area of practice. And this is the first time that that area of practice was formally working with our clean energy department. So really excited. And from that standpoint, how well we worked, this was already a home run of a project. So everything else was amazing for us. One of the things that was important about this project was challenging the assumption that clean energy retrofits are incompatible with historic districts and that historic preservation and climate goals are inherently in conflict. And we believe that the Marblehead project shows that there is alignment and it is possible, and that there are lessons that other Massachusetts towns can take from this project. One of the things we had to that made this project really important is that the scale of the district. So the old and historic districts in Marblehead cover most of the town. And so they also had passed at town meeting, and at the end, Sasha can also jump in now too, if she has anything to add about the climate ambition for the town. It is, they had worked previously with MAPC on a net zero roadmap. They've come up with a climate vision that was accepted at town meeting. This is something that is very important to the community. And their local targets are either in line and in some places have exceeded what the state requires. And they actually just hired last year or year and a half ago their first sustainability coordinator. So they are really putting a lot into this. There was a policy gap between the old and historic districts and the sort of sustainability that the town is moving towards. So the existing guidelines for the historic district really limited solar, heat pumps, EV chargers, and also had some roadblocks around windows, which are actually really important when you're dealing with energy efficiency. And so there was a lot of tension in the community around these climate goals and the preservation. And so the town actually had reached out to the Massachusetts Historic Commission for help with this. And because of the partnership MAPC has been creating with the MHC, the Mass Historic Commission was actually like, we think you should reach out to MAPC. We think they are better positioned to help you with this issue than even we are. And so we began conversations with the town of Marblehead around that. So the project had the goal of creating clear guidelines that balance sustainability and these preservation priorities, and had two sort of outcomes, which is provide Marblehead with the recommended guidelines that they can adopt either through the commission or town meeting, and also sort of create a tool that any municipality can adopt or look at their own guidelines against national standards. And we have that blank matrix. I'm having issues uploading it to Zoom, so I can send that to Patrice and she can share that with you guys after and everything. It will also be in our blog post we're writing. And so the timeline, so it started in 2024 and it just concluded in August of 2025. The main part of this was grounding, preservation, and looking at clean energy retrofits with the Secretary of the Interior standards. These are professional standards that guide all preservation decisions throughout the country. There is a little bit of a misalignment here in Massachusetts because we actually predate most of our preservation, and even the Mass Historic Commission predates the federal law of 1966. And so there's always been this sort of misalignment where we haven't exactly followed it. So we're trying to get towns onto sort of aligning with the standards. And the three main ones are around reversibility, so that retrofits should be removable without damaging the historic fabric of a building, the distinguishability where new elements should complement, but I should know they are new because we don't want to create a false sense of history here, and the scale. So the additions need to be proportionate or smaller, and so that the historic building itself stays the visual focus. And so once we use these three as the guiding principles and grounding everything we did with this in our conversations, it really does frame climate retrofits as consistent with preservation values. So in the town of Marblehead, the town is holding most of this work, but then it delegates it to commissions. So the Old and Historic District Commission, and then the Green Marblehead Implementation Committee. So the Old and Historic Districts Commission oversees anything that can be viewed from a public way, changes in the historic district. And Green Marblehead Implementation Committee is in charge of all the sustainability work that the town is putting forward. So we actually started off by holding a joint session between the Old and Historic District Commission and the Green Marblehead Committee to get everyone sort of on the same page, hear from them what was important, what sort of values they were bringing to the table that we needed to center in the project. For a variety of reasons, we weren't able to hold more joint sessions as we had planned. And so we did a process pivot, working with the town manager and the sustainability coordinator to then we'd already planned to do a charrette, but we expanded that charrette and so not only was it for residents, but we also brought in local leaders and experts from Historic New England and the Newport Restoration Foundation, two very well-known, storied, organizations in the region that have been doing a lot of climate sustainability work with their properties. We also shared our draft guidelines, not only with those two commissions, but also with Jeremy Koo and Allison Felix from our clean energy team and our transportation team here at MAPC. We also worked with Patty Keller and Larry Spang of the City of Salem and Margaret Back of the Newport Restoration Foundation. one of our really fun things, but it was, as Sasha will say, it was like very illuminating, is we did walking tours in both Marblehead and Salem. So Salem, since it abuts Marblehead, and their historic commission has been doing a lot around thinking through clean energy retrofits for their district. We wanted to see sort of where the tensions, but where good things were being modeled too. So kind of boots on the ground, and highly recommend anyone doing that. So through the conversations with residents, with the town, with the commissions, we decided to focus on the 4 most common and highly visible and debated retrofits. And so that was solar panels, air source heat pumps, EV charging, and energy efficient windows. And we, again, created a comparative matrix tool where we compared Marblehead's current guidelines to national standards, but also picking 3 other communities, Salem, Nantucket, and Concord. And we picked them based on sort of Salem was a local community. Nantucket is another community that Marblehead often compares itself to because they are a special acts historic district. And that is a whole other presentation to explain a 40C and a special acts historic districts. And then Concord, because the history of Marblehead is really tied to the identity of the community, very similarly to how the history of Concord is very tied to their identity as well. And also compared it to their climate vision and their net zero roadmap. See where there's alignment, see where there's misalignment. And then we use this to create the proposed recommendations, and it's draft language that they can accept, but it's also stuff that other municipalities can look at to see how we grounded our recommendations and the language we used. Again, there's heated debates over should and shall and could and must. I feel like Margie would have really appreciated our legalese conversations on that. And so these are just sort of really brief points about the recommendations that we did. So again, solar energy systems, so solar panels are allowed on both historic and non-historic buildings. We wanted to prioritize non-visible secondary elevations, ensure reversibility again, and minimal visual impact. Same thing with air source heat pumps, placing at the rear, less visible areas. One of the things is to paint the set lines so that they're not visually intrusive. And we do want to limit wall penetrations because there's the whole idea too about the exterior of these buildings. Sometimes embedding them into the walls can actually harm them more. So are we trying to just protect the landscape or the historic buildings that make up the landscape? Those are 2 very different things. So those were interesting conversations. And so you can also see EV chargers, you know, again, trying to screen some of this. It's just sort of trying to limit the visual impact, but there are different ways to do this. And then for the windows, obviously historic preservationists, we do prefer you to reuse or repair the wooden or otherwise original windows, but also recognizing that might not be cost effective to everyone, right? Like we have to take into account different situations. So where can we offer flexibility about that? And so we did add like having energy audits so that people really knew, is this definitely something I need to have done, is replacing these windows, or is actually the problem coming from somewhere else and we just happen to think it's the windows that are causing the problems. And then some of the transferable elements that we see from this project, again, applying the reversibility, distinguishability, and scale when reviewing energy retrofits, pairing the policy work with the community charrettes. Definitely think walking tours are fun, but also really there are aspects to these buildings you wouldn't notice if you were just looking at a photo or, you know, just looking at drawings of where a retrofit might actually go. And all of this is, again, to create predictability for the residents and for the commissions that are dealing with this so that they are in alignment, they know what they're coming into the room to discuss. Again, that comparative matrix to compare what you currently have to national standards to help with these conversations between different groups. And then you can adapt the proposed recommendations that we've created to what would best fit your community. Because of the conversations that we had out of this, one of the things we are actually doing is our October 21st EMHCC, so the Eastern Massachusetts Historical Commission Coalition. We're going to have a webinar around exploring historic district bylaws, guidelines, and rules. And we're actually going to be working with one of our panelists for the historic district appeals process that MAPC also runs for historic districts in our region. And so between these conversations for the Marblehead project, we did a webinar around ADUs for the EMHCC earlier in the spring. We are noticing again, because Massachusetts was so in the forefront of historic preservation, and was doing stuff well before the federal government was getting involved into this, that our commissions are struggling with how their laws and bylaws and guidelines were written in like the 60s, 70s, 80s, updated in the 90s, even a few years ago, with the specificity of our laws, like the ADU law, the new climate bill. And so trying to help our cities and towns navigate that. And again, this project really just shows that preservation and climate can advance together. And that if you come up with clear standards, you're going to reduce that sort of case-by-case disputes or the uncertainty for, again, both the residents and the commissioners. And again, residents, through the predictability, they are not investing time and money into retrofits that wouldn't be allowed, or that they're going to have to go back and forth a lot of times. And again, historic character and community sustainability benefit both. Many of our historic buildings were not meant to live in the climate we are currently experiencing, with like 100, degree days, to the extent that we're having it. So how can sustainable retrofits actually help preserve the longevity of these buildings? And just moving the thinking from whether upgrades are allowed to they will be allowed. And it's just, talking with residents, community members, other experts about how to allow these retrofits. So sort of changing the thinking. And thank you. I know I really blew through this, but I know I had very short amount of time, and always happy to talk about any of this.
Lindsay, you do have a question in the chat around the webinar registration link for that one that you were just mentioning, and I don't have the link.
Yes, I can do that. We just created that this week, so we have not started putting it in newsletters and stuff. Yeah. Yes, but I can get you that.
Great. And I guess I'll call on Keith while you do that.
Thanks very much. Keith Bergman, in Concord, former resident of Nantucket, and thank you for this work. I think it's important work, and glad to see it. An issue from Nantucket, actually, that my daughter deals with, since she still lives there. And it really is it's a sustainability issue, and it's using the demolition delay bylaw that historic commissions have to ensure that older homes can get recycled rather than demolished. And as you're probably aware from Nantucket's experience in Special Act, their HDC has the authority to hold up a demolition delay now for 6 months, during which time the structure that would be demolished gets offered to anyone who will take it away and make a residence out of it. So I always thought that was a neat example. It's one of the reasons why there are more house moves on Nantucket than anywhere else, because there's a lot of, so there's a lot of activity there. But I was just wondering if there's any examples from there that are lessons for other situations that other communities in their historic district commissions are facing. Thanks so much for your work.
Yeah, no. I think there are a lot of lessons. Again, I think it's that coming together, with the assumption that climate and preservation do go together. They do actually support each other. Because again, the point that I sort of ended on, these buildings aren't made for the climate that we're living in, right? Like in New England, all these 100+ degree days. How can we help cool them? Also, how can we elevate certain things? Because, Marblehead, one of the other issues is they're coastal, right? Like sea level rise and other things, and that we just need to make these buildings more resilient. I will say one of the little things that Nantucket actually did that I did like that I do know Marblehead stole is for the windows for weatherization and everything. They do talk, and the federal standards don't even talk about this, is like certain things about like heat, retaining wind, curtains and things like that. So again, I think there's things that you can think creatively along with doing like air source heat pumps and things like that. So.
And I just wanted to add on the deconstruction piece that it is an emerging issue in Massachusetts, especially as construction costs increase. I believe the town of Brookline has been looking into creating some deconstruction.
They've been working with Van about that,
Yeah,
actually.
and then Sarah Scott on our land use team, who's also on this project and unfortunately isn't here today, she has been participating in the state's DEP deconstructed waste working group. So it is an issue that also the state is interested in addressing through the DEP and some of the waste management pieces from that angle.
That's great, thanks. And even the house moving, sometimes it's just because of sea level rise or erosion or something. And it's a tradition that goes back hundreds of years. If anyone's ever been to Nantucket or to Provincetown, rather, there are these decals on some of their homes. And what it means is that the structure had been floated over from Long Point to downtown Provincetown once the fish left the area where the fishing was taking place. But there's so many examples over history when historically significant buildings were in fact moved to other locations, and that's okay for historic preservation.
The House of Seven Gables is actually going to be doing that. They've been prepping for it. In the next couple of years, they'll be moving the house into what is now the parking lot and everything. And that's actually why Sarah is not here, is she is at the Preservation in a Changing Climate conference that is up at the Peabody Essex in Salem today. And that is one of the things they are talking about. And both the House of Seven Gables and Historic New England, which is why we partnered with them, are really doing a lot of good work in this space around, historic preservation and climate, and not in a way that is, just focused on everything must stay the same, because they're recognizing we have to allow change, we have to adapt to preserve these buildings, but also recognizing these houses have adapted for hundreds of years to the needs of the people who currently live in them, right? And that we need to allow that to happen going forward. Mo?
Yeah, Mo, and then I'm also not sure how much time we have for Q&A, so if whoever's soliciting.
First of all, thank you. First of all, I really appreciate this effort. Two, I found this presentation enormously helpful. And lastly, 6 months for those of us who deal with that is woefully inadequate to preserve or prevent demolition. It's very easy to get around it. And in Needham, we have not been successful except in a very, very limited number of cases. We're losing our historic inventory. So if you can get the 6 months to a year or 18 months, it would help. But again, thank you very much for this. I've learned very practical information that can be applied here.
Yeah, and I will say about demo delays, again, I know, you know, saving a building is one of the, you know, best things you can do for the climate, right? For, you know, preservation too. I just put a link for the EMHCC because we did do a demo delay back in February of 2024. So from bylaw to action, understanding demolition delay implementation. So if you, since I know that has been brought up a few times, again, it is, some people have longer than 6 months, some, you know, have the 6 months, some don't have it at all. But I think the important thing sort of related to preservation around also, again, moving structures and things like that, and even solar panels and stuff, is that you can also allow that the building will be documented before it is torn down, or if you're really concerned about what solar panels might do to something, you can document that. And the Mass Historical Commission has certain forms. It goes into MACRIS, which is a database. And so that can also sort of relieve maybe some of the preservation fears around how these retrofits may or may not harm a building, so that you can then show them that it won't harm it, right? But sometimes you need to do certain steps to help people feel more comfortable moving forward with something that might seem new. Any other questions?
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I just want to say that this house that I'm sitting in was moved down the hill, I think, in the 1890s. It was part of a larger structure, and the main portion was torn down. And for whatever reason, they decided to move this portion of it down the hill. So they were even doing it back then. That's all.
The last sort of little pitch I'll say that I think we did in this project, and again, there is a reason we chose Salem to also review our recommendations, is I think our approach and Salem's approach was very human-centered in how we looked at historic preservation. So again, how can we make these buildings livable for the people who live there in ways that are sustainable for them? Again, they want solar panels, or they want air source heat pumps or EV charging, but also in a way that isn't exorbitant in the cost, right? Like that will cost people out, because, you know, we talk about this, like some of the most affordable housing that we have in the region is naturally occurring affordable housing is in our historic buildings. And I say that as someone who lives in one, right? Like, and so as like my landlord looks to do certain things in this, you know, that is something also we're considering. So we don't want to price people out to do these retrofits.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you so much, Lindsay. I agree that the presentation and the work is super important, and I found the presentation really informative and great. And I know there's been contact information put in and other things in the chat, so please utilize that moving forward. But let's do an e-clap for them on their presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys taking time to not only do the project and the work, but also to kind of share your findings and your expertise with us. Really appreciate it. Great. All right, next up on the agenda is the executive report. I'm going to call on Lizzie. Take it away.
Thanks, Erin. I appreciate it. And I do just kind of want to also note that part of the reason we are periodically doing project shares is because we're trying to better connect the work plan and the strategic priorities that really drive our work plan with some of the work, so that you can actually see what it is that we're doing at the agency and kind of connect those dots and ask us questions and come back to us when there's things you would like us to be working on or things you're excited about that we're already working on. So that was kind of part of the background for why we did that one today. Okay, so the executive report, like I said, we're trying to shorten these a little bit and get our teams to really focus on projects that are moving and announcements that we have to share that we're really excited about. So I want to highlight just a few things in the report. The first thing I actually want to highlight is on the second page around our data services work. So I think a lot of folks here are familiar already with our data common, which is this extremely open data resource. This is actually like a very important aspect of our work at MAPC, that we do not actually sell our data. So we try to collect data and aggregate it and make it available. And we created Data Common as a real open source model so that other folks that are doing good planning work would actually have data available to them that they could share. We did an update to the Data Common website, which there's a link in the document which you can click on, and I encourage you to play around on it because it's really pretty and new. And we are really talking about how we can continue to update Data Common and make it really a data platform for the agency. So we're really excited. This work was almost a year and a half in the making to kind of do this update, even while the original Data Common existed. But we're really excited about the update that we've done and wanted to make sure everyone saw it. Scrolling down actually to our environment team, I actually want to highlight both of the pieces that were included from our environment team this month. We did our official launch of the Climate Resilience Playbook at a webinar last week. About 600 people registered for the webinar, and we had somewhere around 375 folks who actually attended. We were joined by the climate chief, Melissa Hoffer, and Undersecretary Catherine Antos. And it has just been incredibly well received as a toolkit for our cities and towns. And the nice thing about the playbook, and I encourage you to click on it and look at the website and again, kind of play around on it, is that it does actually also help cities and towns think about implementation. So kind of depending on where you are on your local resilience journey, there's opportunities to kind of plug in throughout the whole playbook. It's been a really collaborative effort. And I should also note that we did this work in collaboration with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, PVPC, and EEA. And it's been a really wonderful effort, and I encourage you to take a look. I also want to highlight the next piece, which is about the announcement of the Accelerating Climate Resilience Grants. So these are dollars that we actually received from the Barr Foundation. Patrice, it was right under the playbook. There you go. You're good. These are dollars that we received from the Barr Foundation. This is, I think, the 5th or 6th year that we've been doing the Accelerating Climate Resilience Program. And we budgeted $800,000 for FY26, and we received over $3 million in funding requests. And we essentially are acting as a pass-through for grant dollars from Barr to entities who are doing actual implementation on the resilience side. The thing about the program that was different this year was that Barr really strongly encouraged us to, and when your major funder does encourage you to do things, you usually do them. They encouraged us to include an opportunity for community-based organizations to apply for these grants. And so we saw an enormous uptick in community-based organizations that were applying. And so when we created the team at MAPC to review all the applications, we kind of created a very strong rubric that indicated that if it was a community-based organization that was getting awarded, we wanted to make sure we were still seeing a really strong partnership with the city or town. So we listed the awards that were just made. We're going to be doing a public release, so consider this like a little close to the vest, a preview of the public information to come. Communities know and the entities know that they've been awarded, but we're going to do a public release, I think, later this week. And we're really excited about all these projects. They're all really, really interesting. Scrolling down a little bit, I wanted to highlight the Sustainability Day at the State House. So I think we mentioned this at last month's meeting too. It was the first sustainability day that the State House has ever seen. And it was sponsored by Reps Nguyen and Sokolo. They're the chair and vice chair of the Committee on Climate Action and Sustainability. And it was actually a really great day. We coupled it with a panel where Climate Chief Hoffer also spoke, but Julie Curdy, our Clean Energy Director, was there. And there was actually like a really great picture of her that we put up on social, where like she's like commanding a whole hearing room. It's pretty great. And it was a really big success. There was about 35 other exhibitors that were there, and it was really well attended. It had a really great article in State House News. And our team was one of the people who really helped spearhead the event and kind of get it across the finish line. Scrolling down again to municipal collaboration, I feel like I might have mentioned this event recently to some of you. You can see a picture of us at the O'Brien Towers in Quincy. This is one of our digital equity launch events. So we, I think folks know, have for the past several years been involved in a digital equity program, which puts free Wi-Fi in housing authorities across the state, actually. And we had the Quincy launch at the end of August. It was a really fun event because residents were actually there in the room and we were signing them up on the spot to receive free Wi-Fi. And the vast majority of residents in the O'Brien Towers speak Mandarin. And so we also had simultaneous translators for the entire day to help people sign up for Wi-Fi. It was, you can tell by our smiles, we were all like really pumped. It was a really fun event. And I think there's going to be a few more to come. So more pictures like this of us behind MBI's Go Live sign, which is accompanied by like a comically large light switch that they like flip the switch and everyone cheers. So fun event. Moving on to public health. I wanted to highlight this first item inside the public health team. We do work with the cities of Chelsea and Revere and the town of Winthrop on the North Suffolk Public Health Collaborative. You've probably heard me talk about it in the past. The entity was just awarded a $2 million grant to increase food security in those cities and towns, and truly could not come at a more critical time. As we're seeing food security programs being cut at the federal level. And these are all extremely food vulnerable communities. So the North Suffolk Public Health Collaborative will act as the backbone organization and so offer dollars back to the cities and towns to support food security in those communities. And then I wanted to note in strategic initiatives, Eric Hove led an effort. It was actually just yesterday. We did take a picture. I'm sure it'll come up in a future executive report where we had a visit from the Bogota Colombia regional delegation. So they are starting a brand new regional organization in Bogota, and they wanted to get information about how we do our work here at MAPCs. We had about a 2-hour convening with them yesterday. They had a ton of questions about how we do our work, how we're financed, what all of you do, how you help us make decisions. And they are working together with staff from MIT's Leventhal Center, which kind of has this like international urban program that really helps entities that are thinking about this work. And it's always really, really cool to be asked to be, it's probably the third visit or so that I've done from some foreign entity that's looking to do this work, because it makes you realize how unique and wonderful the work that we get to do in Metro Boston is. So it was really a good visit, and they had just tons of really great questions for us. And then I want to highlight in the transportation work, I encourage you to read both of these updates in transportation, but I really want to call out a staff member here. So Mara Hollins really led a lot of the work for the Revere walk, bike, and roll plan. We had an incredible amount of outreach and engagement. This was the project where a couple months ago, I talked about the number of surveys that we'd received, which was like an overwhelming number of responses. And it was also a project where we had like really significant youth engagement in the city of Revere, which was wonderful. And then the last item in the transportation section is about awarding the Blue Bikes contract that we expect to award to lift Urban Solutions again and again. This is an enormous amount of work that Mara put in to get this out. This is not a public announcement yet either. So again, keep it close to the vest for now. But I really wanted to call out Mara's work because it's just both of these projects were very, very big, very political, very difficult. And she just, put her whole heart and soul into the work and wanted to call all of that out for all of you. I also want to let all of you know inside related to transportation that we had received an award at the very end of the Biden administration of about a $26 million FHWA grant to do expanding Blue Bike system and expanding transportation management. We got the award, never got a contract, assumed everything was dead. And about a week ago, heard from FHWA that it seems like the opportunity is still alive. And we are in the process of trying to advance a grant agreement right now. So stay tuned on that one. It's a very large amount of money. MAPC is mostly in the position of offering pass-through dollars to our cities and towns. A small amount stays for operation at the agency, but it would be pretty transformative, and alongside the new award on Blue Bikes is really important. And I think that's it on project updates. We do have a handful of new staff starting. We have a new assistant director of arts and culture starting in another couple of weeks. A new municipal collaborations services specialist starting in another couple of weeks. And then we have a number of open positions, which are still up, and we're in the interview process for those as well. So lots of moving pieces.
What a bunch of great updates. Thank you so much, Lizzie. Are there any questions before we move on to the next topic?
I have a quick question, if I may. I'm curious, Lizzie, about the Bar Foundation changes to their grant assignments. So I know with a lot of the CDCs and other community-based organizations, there's been so much change with the political environment when it comes to grants from the federal government, and is that part of the reason why Bar is kind of changing their position on the grants, or did they give you any reason? I'm just interested.
I think it's a really good question, and I think this change actually came. Honestly, we were having this conversation with them even before all of those cuts were on the table, but contemplated, right? So it was like part of the reality of the situation. But I also think, we as an agency have also started really purposefully connecting our community engagement work with community-based organizations. Because we feel really strongly that if we're kind of coming in as the planning agency, we might not be the best messenger or storyteller to really bring residents in who've historically not been at all involved in the planning process. So our work has also transitioned to focus a lot more on on relationship building with community-based organizations. And Bar is like very supportive of that as like a strategic priority for MAPC. And so I think it was probably several fold. I think they also, Bar gets a lot of like relatively small grant applications, which it's harder for them to process like every single one of them. And so if they're doing a pass-through grant making program, it's an easier space for them to say, you guys should handle all of these myriad community-based organizations that are going to come out of the woodwork and apply for funding. So I think that's a whole host of reasons why they encouraged it. But it did, for us, we were supportive of the shift. I think our first priority is still to make sure that cities and towns are really front and center of the resilience work. But we were supportive of the shift because it's only going to help us build stronger relationships at the local level if we're not the only ones trying to send a message about this work.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Sorry, my mouse is being glitchy. A wireless mouse is being glitchy, and I'm having trouble finding it to come off mute. Anyway, thank you so much, Lizzie. Thank you again for all those great updates. Next up on the agenda is the report of the Legislative Committee. I'm going to call on Legislative Chair Keith to provide an update or to pass it to Leah.
Thanks very much, Keith Bergman, Chair of the Legislative Committee. And before I call on Leah. Just want to say how great it was to get to see in person our government affairs team twice last week on Tuesday in Gardner Auditorium at the State House for the first round in this session of hearings on our real estate transfer fee for affordable housing. And then our legislative committee had a hybrid meeting, and I was able to be in the MAPC offices the very next day. And thank goodness for commuter rail both days. So I am just so proud of all the work that Leah and the team are doing, and we'll turn it over to Leah. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. I was just looking through the latest round of how many hearings we have been at and how many letters we've submitted. 50 bills have been heard of the 83 that MAPC has endorsed. We've submitted letters on most of those. We're still waiting on about 24-ish others. And a few, the numbers are a little bit wonky because some are primarily ideas that we're going to be pushing as amendments to bigger bills. So the math doesn't math there, but I am aware that the math doesn't math. But there's been a lot of letters this morning. Josh Fiala testified in support of the site plan review legislation before the Housing Committee. As Keith indicated, we were at the transfer fee hearing, and Georgia testified yesterday, 2 days ago, on the Overdose Prevention Center's legislation that we've endorsed as well. So lots of activity up at the State House in these legislative hearing spaces. Again, we're expecting all of these hearings based on the rules are supposed to be wrapping up by the first week of December. And we're seeing quite a big push through this month of September and seeing those scheduled out even into October at this point, which is really great to have some air space in between knowing the hearing is scheduled and being ready to testify. The one hearing that I want to put on all of your radars is the Municipal Empowerment Act, which is going to have a hearing before the Joint Committee on Municipalities. There are a number of different pieces of that bill that we're working really hand in glove with the administration, with MMA, with our sub-regional coordinators to try to lift up, because it is such a technical bill and it's so wonky and it's so impactful for the communities in our region and across the state. So be on the lookout from us for different pieces of ways that you can support, and we may be reaching out for your advice and guidance on other ways that we can be elevating some of the critical pieces of this bill that we're really hoping to get some traction on in the months ahead, because legislators don't do procurement, so they're not aware that changing 3 words would really make it so much better for cities and towns, and honestly save money. Which is going to be such a critical thing for the state to be considering in the months ahead, as we know we're heading into yet another really tough budget season. We're not there yet. We've got a little bit of time before we talk about budget impacts of the state, but of the fiscal budget. Expect that coming from us in a few months. I don't have any federal updates for you this month. We continue to be watching all of the executive orders and continue to be watching all of the various court cases. If you are seeing or hearing of anything that you have questions about, please do not hesitate to reach out. We have been elevating these conversations that we've been having internally with legislative offices and the different committees at the State House that are starting to consider these issues as well. So right now we're really in a keep things moving space. And really excited to be moving towards the MARPA conference next month on October 7th. I'll be sure to put the link to that in the chat. If you haven't yet signed up to come, please do. This is a rare opportunity to have, I think, about a third of the governor's cabinet in one space on one stage talking about how their work intersects with each other's. If it feels like our work at MAPC, it should. It's really, really incredible to hear how this administration is thinking about the interconnections and the opportunities that exist across the work. And then we also just got word, it is not posted yet, but I can share with you, a little premature, that we're going to be able to offer credit, APA credit for attending the panels that happen afterwards. So please do sign up. Please encourage folks in your communities, either staff or electeds, to come. It really will feature folks from across the Commonwealth. And that's what we got for the Legislative Committee. And we're anticipating canceling our next meeting so that members of the committee can attend the MARPA conference, which is the day before our scheduled meeting time.
Great. Thank you, Leah. Does anyone have any questions or anything to add for the Legislative Committee? Okay, great. And I hope to see everyone at the DLS MARPA conference as well on October 7th. Yeah. Okay, great. So next up on the agenda is the update on fall council meeting, and I'm going to call on Emma. We're coming fresh off the MAPC council orientation from yesterday, and Emma did an incredible job. So thank you so much to them for that. So Emma, do you want to give a fall council meeting update?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone who attended the orientation yesterday. Just a quick update and reminder, the fall council meeting will be October 29th at the Arlene Town Hall from 9:30 to noon. Please register if you haven't already. It helps us get a head count for how much food to order, chairs, etc. Exciting update is that we're moving forward on content around our arts and culture work. So if that is something that you're excited about, we'll have some speakers for that. And that's the update.
Thank you so much, Emma. Any questions or comments on the fall council?
I should just note that Claire can probably attest to the fact that we're ordering catering from Butternut Bakehouse, and you will not want to miss. Even that alone is a good reason to come to the council meeting. Yep, thumbs up. And I also just want to acknowledge, because Emma shared it with us yesterday, that it was their 1-year MAPC workiversary. And we're just incredibly grateful, Emma, to have you here helping to shepherd this table and really focus your work on the council. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lizzie, for that. I felt like I kept saying it yesterday. So I was like, everyone's probably sick of me talking about it. Emma's definitely sick of me talking about it, but a workiversary is very momentous and special and should be celebrated, especially when you've done such an amazing job this year supporting all of us. So thank you again for that. Lizzie, any other business not known at the time of posting this agenda?
No, nothing.
Awesome. And look at us, meeting materials out early. Our meeting is getting out early. What a great day. All right. And with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda and to adjourn the meeting.
So made.
All right. I have the motion made by, I'm going to say Mo for this one. And the second, I'm going to have John DePriest. Okay. Roll call is going to be required because we are virtual. I almost said hybrid. I guess some are hybrid, those who are in the MAPC office, but please come off mute. And I'm going to call roll for this vote. Here we go. Imai.
Aye.
Colette.
Aye.
Keith.
Aye.
Karen.
Aye.
Jen.
Aye.
Tom D.
Aye.
Whitney.
Aye.
John D.
Aye.
Sarah D.
Aye.
Tom G. Mo.
Aye.
Sagoon. Tabor.
Aye.
Robert. Sarah L.
Aye.
Angie. Peter.
Aye.
Fiona.
Aye.
Vandana.
Aye.
Claire.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Steve. Juan. Elaine.
Aye.
And Erin. Aye. And with that, our meeting is adjourned at 12:37 p.m. Thank you all for such a great meeting, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.